If you will, go ahead and turn to John chapter 14. We're continuing our study on Jesus' great I am statements in the book of John. And we're doing them chronologically. So at this point, we are in Jesus' last week of life. As a matter of fact, the moment that we're entering into right now is the moment he sits down and tells his disciples he's leaving. You know, he's warned them plenty of times that he's going to be killed, that he's going to be sacrificed. Now it's real, and there's a certain sense that we take it when we look at the scriptures. They know things are dangerous for them, but they don't realize what's about to happen, and it shocks them. I mean, very quickly they're going to go to the Garden of Gethsemane. He's going to do his second prayer of the evening there. John chapter 17 is his first prayer. He's going to do his second prayer in the garden, and then he's going to be arrested, tried, and crucified come Friday day. So this is Thursday night, and he's with his disciples. And notice as we enter this upper room, Thomas says to him in verse 5, "Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way?" We're intruding on this in the middle of a conversation. It actually starts in chapter 13. And Jesus has done something. Poor Peter. Have you ever had compassion for poor Peter? I have compassion for poor Peter because I can be a lot like Peter, I think, at times. And, you know, he opens mouth, inserts foot, bites off at the hip. You know, he's got that foot and mouth disease. And Jesus has just dropped the bomb on poor Peter. He says, "You're going to deny me. Before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. And he talks about where I am going, you cannot follow. And so Thomas's response here is partly due to what they witnessed with Peter, but it's also, you know, and it's a great question. How can we know the way? Let's pick up in verse 1. "Let not your hearts be troubled." Why is he saying that? Well, he's getting ready to go away. He's going to leave them alone. How would you say goodbye to your best friends? You know, have you ever been in one of those situations where you've had to say goodbye to somebody? When our granddaughter was born, or she's now 15, when she was born, her parents lived with us. And so the first year and a half of her life, she lived in our house. And for all intents and purposes, we were extended parents. We get the call to go to Montana, and we had to make some tough decisions. The family is starting to split up. For those who have raised grandchildren, and you do know how this works. Children are okay. Children are okay, right? But those grandbabies, wow, if I had known, I would have skipped the whole parent part. It's just gone right straight to grandparent because they're so much cooler. They just are. I mean, kids can be pretty cool, don't get me wrong, but those grandbabies, they are phenomenal. And so Lily's a year and a half old. We're getting ready to go to Montana, and preacher's pay is not great. I thought you can't do a whole lot on preacher's pay. So we thought our chances of getting back to Florida to see them were pretty minimal. So we decided to take her to Disney for 3 days. And we just we spent a lot of money. We stayed at a Disney hotel, Animal Kingdom. We had giraffes coming up to our second floor balcony, and the giraffe would stick its head over the balcony. And of course, that was big for Lily. And we went to Disney and just had fun. On that 3rd day, halfway through the day, we decided it's time to go home because it's a small world. And we stood in lines. Lily falls asleep on my shoulder. We ride through It's a Small World, and she's asleep the whole time. Put her in the stroller, and she's dead unconscious. I mean, she is just gone. It's done. I mean, we had exhausted the 1.5-year-old, and And it was just done. It was time to go home. Now, I have to tell you, that goodbye was mostly about Grandma and Grandpa. It was everything. I mean, really, a year and a half old to Disney. She doesn't remember that. She's 15 now. She doesn't remember that. So how do you say goodbye to people you cherish and you love? That's what Jesus is doing at this moment. And he's saying to these beloved disciples, to these, and he stops in the middle of this. In these great chapters, he says, you're now my friends. We're friends. And it's this idea, the kinship is like brothers. You know, he starts to talk in different terms with them. And so he's assuring them, I mean, in their minds, in just a few hours, the world's going to come to an end. They don't know what's coming. He does. Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? Hey guys, things are going to be kind of tough. Not kind of tough. Almost everybody in this room is going to be killed because you're my disciple. He doesn't. I mean, he's told them. This is a Rick Page paraphrase. I'm just filling in the details from Jesus' point of view. One of you is going to live to old age. The rest of you, boiled in oil, filleted alive, skinned, crucified upside down. But I'm going someplace, and I'm going to wait for you, and I'm going to build you. I'm going to prepare a mansion. It's going to be a nice place. By the way, it's the same sort of, just so we understand the intimacy that Jesus is painting, it is no different than a groom saying to his betrothed, his bride, I'm going to go get Dad's house ready, because that's what a Jewish boy would do. He would betroth himself to a girl. He would go, and he would prepare a room on Dad's house, and when Dad said it was ready, then the groom would go and get the bride, and they would go through the marriage ceremony. And it tended to be a year, 2 years after that process started. So when Jesus says to us, the church, I'm going to prepare a home for you, he is the groom saying to us, the bride, I'm getting things ready for you. And Dad's going to tell me when I can come back and get you. I mean, that's pretty intimate, isn't it? That's about as close can get. And if I go, verse 3, to prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am you may be also. And you know the way to where I'm going. Hey guys, come on, figure this out. You really know. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you're going. How can we know the way? Jesus said to him, I am. And understand the enormity in this world, in this pluralistic society, and that's just a big word for saying, and anything goes in our society. They will accept anything. I mean, there's aliens living everywhere. I mean, every kind of crazy thing you can think of. The world's buying into it, but when it comes to Christianity, they say, no, that's too absolute. That can't be true. But look at what Jesus says here in verse 6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now that's about as absolute gets. There's no other religions. There's no other way. There's no other path. There's nothing else. The only way to heaven is through Jesus Christ. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on, you do not know him. You do know him and have seen him. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on, you do know him. Oh, that's a repeat. Verse 8, Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us. Jesus said to him, have I been with you so long, and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? If you see me, you've seen God. If you know what Jesus looks like, you know what God looks like. If you've talked to Jesus, you know what God talks like. If you get an idea of how Jesus thinks, you know how God thinks. Verse 10, do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or else believe on account of the works themselves. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever believes in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works than these will he do, because I'm going to the Father. Now, I've tried to stress this over the years, and I hope you're getting at. What Jesus left behind was an organization, an entity, that he promised would do greater things than Jesus did. And we did. He went from one person preaching the gospel, and by the way, the salvation didn't come until his crucifixion and his resurrection. But he went from one telling the story of what was going to come to 12 who then influenced thousands, who then influenced millions, who have influenced billions of people over the years. That salvation and peace with God is available through Jesus Christ. We've done far greater things than Jesus ever did. We do it because we have the power of Jesus in our lives. We have the power of gospel in our lives. So, I mean, a great promise, and it's what he leaves behind. And then verse 13, whatever you ask in my name, this I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. And if you ask anything in my name, I will do it. That's a pretty big promise. So let's look at this. Let's look at what Jesus has to say. Number one, he says he is the way. Now, he uses specifics there. As he says the way, the truth, and the life, that is about as absolute can get. You can't get more sure than that. He is saying, this is truth. Now, that's particularly poignant in our time period, because truth is, well, let's say, priceless commodity right now. I mean, how do you know what truth is anymore? Every time you turn around, somebody's yelling fake news, right? And then this one is saying, no, this one's got Pinocchios, and that one's saying, no, this one's got Pinocchios. And there's all kinds of untruths, but Jesus is different. This is an absolute. He is the way to God. He is absolutely who he says he is, and he continues to be. But notice it's also a model. He is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. We've got the gospel tied up right there. This is, you want to know how to share with people? All you do is talk about Jesus in your life. We're struggling right now with evangelism in the church, and here's why. You mention evangelism, a lot of people get scared. I mean, it just sounds like, oh, I've got to do the course on how to be a contagious Christian, or how to be a contagious church, or I've got to do this process, or I've got to learn this. Do you know, one of the reasons why I've recommended this book that we're doing on Tuesdays, The Gospel Comes with a House Key, is all that woman does in that book is she talks about a preacher and his wife who did nothing more than open up their door, invite her in, and they shared themselves and their story with Jesus with her. Not complicated, not a process. There wasn't a 14-point process. This is how I'm going to lead you to Christ. All they did was say, this is who I am. This is who I believe in. He is the way, the truth, and the life. And I'm going to share it with you. And her life, diametrically opposed to what we consider the Christian life, completely 100% the opposite of what we consider a Christian person. And her life turned around. Now guess what she does? She opens up her home and she does exactly the same thing. You don't need a college degree to share Jesus. You just need to tell your story of Jesus in your life. It's a law. It's a way to talk to people about somebody who loves you unconditionally, and you've got stories. It's a promise and a hope, though, too. Isn't it? It is a promise and a hope. I'm going to prepare a place for you. Is this world, is it pretty stinky? Yeah. Are there times you just kind of say, it'd be nice to get off this ride right now? Wouldn't it? I mean, and the more you read, the more stuff that's going on. It's just like, Ajay Wall put on Facebook the other day. Somebody we know, he's a missionary in India. He and his family have been missionaries for how many generations now? It's amazing, but it's amazing over there, just what's going on. And he posted the beheading of a Christian man in India. And I know where Ajay was coming from. He just poured out his heart and he says, when will this stop? And all this man had done was just, he would refuse to deny Jesus Christ. He refused to deny Jesus Christ. And so some extremists over there beat him. They tortured him, and then they cut off his head. For nothing more than believing in Jesus Christ. So the next time you complain about how Christianity is being persecuted in the United States, I haven't seen anybody come in here and say, oh, by the way, Bob, we'll pick up Bob. Bob's not going to be with us this week. His head is missing. It doesn't happen here, does it? Not yet. So, I mean, this is a pretty awful place to live in, particularly if we live in some places. But Jesus says, man, something better is coming. I'm giving you a promise. It's me, God, giving you a promise that you can hope in. And that's all I did with Ajay. I just said, Ajay, it's going to stop when our Lord returns. Until then, all we can, and I'm in the middle of this sermon, all I'm doing is thinking about where I'm going here. I said, all we can do is just cling to the promise and the hope. Right? But notice he says, in this passage, he adds this idea of prayer. Whatever you ask in my name, I'm going to give it to you. Now, let's get real honest here. How many of you truly buy into that? I mean, haven't you prayed for a lot of stuff and, it doesn't always come out that way? Well, I've got two answers for you in regards to prayer. Notice this first one. It's actually a quote. I stole it from somebody else. God always answers your prayers in precisely the way you want them to be answered if you knew everything He knew. I've struggled with how to say that over the years, and I just think, well, Tim Keller, you did a pretty good job there. Okay, every once in a while, Keller hits one out of the ballpark, and this was one of those out of the ballpark. And truly think about that. One of the ways I've said it is God always answers your prayer. Sometimes we don't think He does, but He does. And so I've said things like, sometimes it's just, I'm going to give you what's best. This says it precisely. I mean, just specifically, God always answers your prayers in precisely, exactly the way you want Him to, if you know what He knows. And we don't know what He knows, do we? But here's the second bit of imagery that I have for you when it comes to prayer. And I find it with Suzanne and I. Let's see, we're getting ready to hit March, come April. 40 years with that woman. 40 years! Wow! Man, for those of you who have been you know, the 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, things just kind of, they're different than that day that you stand before the preacher and you say, I do, and, you know, sickness and in health, for richer or for poor, and all those idealistic things. And of course, your brain is screening out, we're not going to be poor. We're going to be rich. We're going to make big bucks. You know, things are always going to be better for us. We're not going to have too much worse. You know, you kind of screen those out. And then you go through the real living, and you find out there is some poorer. Yeah. There's a whole lot of worse a lot of times. And sometimes it's with each other. But then something else starts to happen with married couples. And it should be up on the screen by now. Have you gotten to the point, for those of you who are long-time marrieds, have you gotten to the point you finish each other's sentences? Yeah, I mean, it's just like, wow. Suzanne and I will do things now, and she'll explode, and because I'll say something, and she says, I was thinking that. So her concern is that I'm actually reading her mind at this point. Which is, if you've got a quirky sense of humor, then you might think you want to play on that a little bit, you know? Right? Bill? Does that happen, Tana? Is Bill like that? He's got a quirky sense of humor. So sometimes I'll just say things and she'll say, and they're unusual things. And she'll say, I was thinking exactly the same thing, and it's kind of scary and creepy, isn't it? No, not really. Because when you're side by side, walking side by side and holding hands and spending so much time together, and you're in the thick of it and you're in the thin of it, your thinking does tend to follow the pattern of the other person. Here's something I want to say about prayer. The same thing happens in prayer. If you're really walking alongside God, you find that as time goes by, you know, there's just some things you don't ask for. You know why? You're starting to think like He thinks. And there's times when you pray that the truth is you really truly expect the answer that you're going to get. Why? Because you've walked so closely with Him that you start to think like He does. Now, if that's not happening, that could be an indicator to where your spiritual life needs to grow. Because if you're not thinking like God, and I've been a Christian since I was 12 years old. I say, well, that's 48 years now. I'm getting ready to hit decade number 5. Wow. And you spend so much time in God's Word, and so much time in prayer, and so much time just seeking His face, that after a while, maybe you start to act like Him, and you start to think like Him, and you start to be like Him. So the conversation has kind of changed, don't they? And I do kind of envision that sometimes those prayers are God's finishing my sentences and I'm finishing some of His. But again, if that's not happening, maybe you're not doing too much of the exercise of walking beside Him. And that's a path to get on. So then finally, notice this goodbye for now. When we went out to Montana, we truly thought it would be years before we would see Lily again. I mean, we were brokenhearted, we cried the whole way. They went to Hotlanta, which is such a wonderful city to live in. And when they had 2 car wrecks within a 6-week period, they decided they wanted to leave Atlanta. And then keep in mind, Carl in particular, the grass is always greener someplace else. And it always has been. So he's always had that kind of wanderlust. If we move here, things are going to be different. So after about 8 months or so, they moved out to Montana. And surprise, for a short while they lived with us again. And then they got their own apartment and things, they kind of got in normal. But then it wasn't too much longer. Now, keep in mind, they're still in Montana. We're trying to get them here now, but they're in Montana now. But that's after just a couple more years, and they decide they want to go back south, and they move back south just for a few months. And we stood at the back of our driveway, and then it ended on an alleyway. We've loaded up the car, and man, just thinking about it right now, it just still brings tears to mind. That emotion of saying goodbye to that little girl again. And I love my daughter, don't get me wrong. But boy, this little girl had been the center of our universe for years now. Folks within our church knew how much we loved them. One of the ladies in the church bought some lilies so that Suzanne could plant the lilies in her garden as a reminder of Lily. They knew how much we loved this little girl. And we're standing at that driveway, watching that dirt alleyway, and watching that car go, and we're weeping uncontrollably. Because in this world, some of those goodbyes just seem like they're forever. Notice Jesus' goodbye is for now. I'm going to leave you a mission. And by the way, the mission that he left his disciples is no different today. We inherit the same mission. And he says, guys, go and make disciples. Preach the gospel. Teach them to obey all I've taught you. Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And do it while you're doing your normal stuff. And lo, I am with you always. You remember that? I think you find that somewhere in the Bible, Matthew 28, 18 through 20. You got it. But it's only goodbye for now. Because while you're doing that, while you're living this, I'm building your own. And we'll get together. So I think that's enough for a Sunday. I think that's a pretty good worship service, even if I had to play videos. But let's stand, and I want to close this in something. We're going to close with a song. It's going to be a cappella. And I guarantee you, you know the words of this song. I'm not going to sing it because they've still got my microphone on. So who wants to get, why don't you get us started with Jesus Loves Me.
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong, they are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me, yes, Jesus loves me, yes, Jesus loves me, the Bible tells me so.
Here in a simple little song that children sing, we have the sum total of evangelism. All you need to do is tell people that simple story. Jesus loves you, yes I know, for the Bible tells me so. We are a community transformed by Jesus. And we believe that we are to transform our community with Jesus. Father, I just give you thanks that we've had such a great time. Father, may we next week come back even more energized, thankful for what you give us. Father, may we be thankful for Sam and his service to us. May we be thankful for the distance that he has to drive each and every Lord's Day to be with us. And Father, little things that we forget about. We pray that you bless his marriage and you just take care of that young couple that you put in our care. We thank you for adding in her service and just the amazing dynamics that she brings to this congregation. And that, Father, we have a tendency to just rely on her at the last moment. And Father, what a burden that is on a young mom trying to put a family together and show her husband the love of Jesus Christ. Father, there's a lot of folks in this building right now, and those who are not here that maybe we're not paying attention to. And I pray, Father, that we get better about being thankful not only for what you give us, but who you give us. And we be better about sharing the way, the truth, and the life. In Jesus' name, amen. Be blessed. If you have a